Manish, thanks a lot for bringing this up, because this is something that is very close to our heart. Incidentally, 27-degree centigrade world is something that our board of directors, our founder, Achal Bhai, they have been very passionate about. And while we increased focus on this over the last year, and especially launched a set of activities on the World Environment Day last year, this is something that in a slightly understated form, we have been pushing for a couple of years now. In fact, the 27-degree world logo that we have designed and we are using now is something that we first published on our annual report 3 years back. It's on the cover of the annual report 3 years back. So there's something we have been working on. The basic idea here is we need to build a world which is just comfortable for all kinds of human activity, not too comfortable to cause harm. So if let's say on one side I wanted to make it a 22, 23-degree air-conditioned world, which is what many of our workspaces today are, the impact on environment is terribly high. And on the other hand, if I take it to 32, 35 degrees, the impact on our thermal comfort and our efficiency levels is very high. So a 27-degree world is more a metaphor for balancing our need to have a thermally comfortable environment, as well as the needs of the larger ecosystems around us to not get harmed by it. It's in line with what we say: the world has enough for everybody's need, but not enough for everybody's greed. We are also looking at how we can achieve carbon neutrality over the next couple of years. So we are working on developing that. This entire agenda is part of that larger thought process, saying we need a balance between our needs and what the environment can sustain. Basically, it's a piece of land that is owned by Ahmedabad Municipal Corporation. It's a public park to that extent, and we have kept it that way. However, we adopted it a couple of years back, and we requested Ahmedabad Municipal Corporation to allow us to build an urban forest into it. Thanks a lot for bringing this up, because this is something which is, in a sense, underappreciated, understood, if that term exists. Part of cooling solutions available to all of us. So at one point in time, and this goes a couple of years back, but we were thinking about the evaporative cooling solution and how it can be more democratized. We wanted to democratize cooling, and we came up with a thought called something called Thandak Sabka Hak. We said there's no need for the working classes, those working on shop floors, in warehouses, loading places, factories, all of them, to be left there in the open to manage the heat conditions on themselves without help from the larger community around them, without help from the establishment, from the owners of those places and all those. And we do recognize clearly that running those places on any other cooling solution, whether it's air conditioning, whether it's any other chilling solutions and all those are at some level non-viable in the kind of conditions we operate in. So we had to come up with a solution which goes beyond the traditional room cooling, because most of these places, they are huge, they are large, and that's where the large space venti-cooling solution thing came to us. It was like, these are large spaces, these need to be cooled and these need to be ventilated at the same time. We cannot close them to the environment and say this is how we'll cool this place. These places interact regularly with the outside world. So that's the solution. These are, at a basic level, these are very large scale devices which can cool spaces in thousands and lakhs of square foot at one go. And we have mastered that solution over the last 5-6 years. We started working on this solution about 6 years back. Slowly we developed this. we built it into a viable solution which can be deployed on the ground in a large scale manner, which is not like a custom solution done at one. It's not let's say a Taj Mahal which cannot be built again and again. It's more like Lego blocks. We have these created, and wherever we want we can go and establish them on the sites. So we now have a modular approach to this kind of cooling. The entire system is proudly manufactured in India. We have every single piece that we use in these solutions is made at our factories within the country. And we can deploy these within a week or so time in factories, because we also realize they do not have bandwidth or the leeway to be down for a month for the cooling solutions to be installed. So it can be installed in parallel to manufacturing, it can be installed on the ground, and they can maintain the ambient temperature -8 to 10 degrees very easily, even in large case setups. Within India and globally, we have spaces running into lakhs of square foot in single premises, which are cooled by large space windy cooling solution. In recent experience, we are seeing manufacturing, shop floor, automotive, metal, textiles, cement. They have adopted this big time in manufacturing. Then there are warehouses and logistics sector. We work with some of the largest warehousing solution providers in the country, and each of their warehouses are possibly 80,000, 100,000 square feet big, and those entire warehouses are cooled by this solution. Then there are mid-size establishment. When I say mid-size, these are like, let's say, consider a two-wheeler showroom, a 10,000, 15,000 square foot place. Air conditioning that entire space is something that is completely unviable. So the way it typically works is parts of that space are air conditioned, but the other areas are just left to the environment with the traditional air circulation systems, fans and all being used. So those kind of solutions are there. So the showrooms and mid-sized spaces are there. Workshops of all kinds. Again, these could be service centers of, let's say, consumer appliances, automobiles, and those kind of workshops, mid-scale spaces, 20,000, 30,000 square foot. They have adopted this big way. And then there are public places. So, for example, the largest of such systems that we have installed, again, proudly, is in the Hajj complex in Mecca. Upwards of 5 lakh square foot cooled in the Hajj complex in Mecca using our solution. Public spaces are, again, another place. A lot of temples within India, for example, that have gone for the solutions that we have, so that people who are waiting in long queues and all, though they are not left to the ambient conditions, but they have a slightly better condition to wait or to sit there and all that. See, we'll have to look at it in two ways. The advantages can be seen in terms of the cost advantage vis-a-vis the alternative cooling solutions. And those are immense, I mean, purely on the running cost basis compared to, let's say, any other chilling or cooling, air conditioning kind of services. The payback period is almost about 5 to 6 months. Within that, all the capex incurred is paid back. And then the running costs are barely 8 to 10% of the running costs of any other cooling solution. Then there's the alternative, wherein large spaces which do not have any other cooling system possible. A 50, 70,000 square foot kind of warehouse is not going to be air conditioned no matter what. So that's the only solution available. Now, so the alternative there is to have an air cooling system or to have the traditional fan and tower fan, ceiling fan kind of solution. Okay, there the clear business case comes from better operating conditions, higher productivity. We have monitored. In fact, there was a study that a couple of years back we did jointly with the IIMA, where it was identified by researchers from IIMA that the level of errors went down when the temperatures were more suitable for working. The productivity went up by a certain percentage points. And if you consider those, then again, this solution pays for itself, besides obviously better worker morale and people sort of willingness to come to work to your place. I would want to maybe take a minute to highlight that, Mosi. There are places in Pune, for example, a lot of our customers in auto component sectors in and around Pune. Some of them have installed air cooling solutions on their shop floor, while a few have not. We have very clear anecdotal inputs from a lot of workers there. These are workers who go on contract basis. They are not employed in that sense. They prefer to go to these units where the place is air cooled rather than the places which are not air cooled. Evolution of the modern trade and how does it affect the traditional trade? Yeah. How does it affect or what are the different dynamics with respect to B2B and B2C? And then obviously, is the consumer behavior evolving in line with the growth of these new channels? So let's start from the first one. Over the last 8 to 10 years, we have clearly seen modern trade channels become important, especially in urban centers, as well as countries outside India, for example, with higher levels of urbanization, with higher levels of economic activity and development. And still there are countries within our same 60 plus country portfolio where modern trade is still like upcoming. So we are in all kinds of countries. There are places where modern trade has possibly taken a lion's share of the overall selling universe, not only in air cooling, but across many categories. In India, it's a mix. In India, for example, if you go to places like Mumbai or Hyderabad, modern trade is a very strong presence on the ground. And in some cases, it has taken market share away from traditional trade. Though I would still highlight the word market share, because even within our own, when I look at my own numbers, and we believe that is true for larger consumer appliance sector also, the general trade volume and value have not declined over the last 5-7 years. They have grown, though they have grown at a smaller clip than the modern trade. So the share of modern trade has gone up, but general trade, I would not say it has declined in terms of the number of units they deal in. In terms of their share, yes, possibly they were doing 100% 15 years back or 98% 15 years back. Today they do possibly 75 or 80% of the entire portfolio. But that's where things are. The growth in the business has typically outpaced the decline in market share, even for general trade. That said, that also clearly highlights that the growth in modern trade has been very fast. And I would maybe add to modern trade, there's something called regional chain stores, which is, let's say, players at an early stage of their modern trade journey. When we say modern trade, possibly it's the likes of Chroma or Reliance and all in the country. At the same time, when we say, let's say, regional chain stores or regional retail chains, RRCs or RCS, they include the likes of, let's say, Unilet or Girias in the south, Bajaj in Hyderabad, and so on. They are in their own right, in their own regions, they are very strong. They, at this point in time, do not have a larger national footprint. Possibly they would be aspiring for it. But these are all chain organized stores, so to speak. They have grown dramatically, and consumers are looking at both of them as alternatives. We are aware of consumer journeys starting in general trade, ending in modern trade, and the other way as well. Modern trade offers all the kinds of conveniences in terms of the range, and it displays the ability to help you experience the entire product range at one place or point. The general trade gives you convenience, no need to sort of travel, drive through and all that, familiarity, those kind of stuff. maybe misses on the range that it carries, the kind of demonstrations that it can give to you on the site and all that. Consumers have a mixed journey. And as I said, that journey includes a journey starting online these days, where a lot of consumers do their majority of research at the back end and then go to one of these tools. Coming back to modern trade, in India, this is where we are, growth stage, key cities, very important. In tier 2, tier 3, coming up, but growing fast. At the global stage, in countries in Europe, for example, modern trade is actually our enabler for growing business, because had we wanted to attempt, or if there was a need to attempt the traditional distribution approach, it would have taken a much longer time. Modern trade in Europe or US, for example, enables us to take good products to a set of organized players, explain the business logic, the product portfolio to them, and then use their on-ground presence to start selling. Building a traditional distribution network in those countries would have been a humongous task for us. So that's how it plays out in different parts of the world. Coming to the journey of the consumer, as I said, the consumer is not like exclusive to any of them. Consumers understand that things are multi-channel, and in some countries, even us, including India, for a few categories of products, we are even trying omni-channel to take sort of note of this multi-channel journey that the consumer has, so that the consumer has a unified experience of the brand and the product, rather than having different experiences in different channels. So that's also something that we are looking at as this journey evolves, particularly in the modern trade case, but equally in terms of its relationship to the other channels that we have. Having gone through that journey of almost extinction and survival, to a stage where we are again standing back on our feet and looking forward to achieving more in our brand's journey. We understand that there are times when things may go wrong, and our approach of buying some of these companies globally is based on looking at the value at the next level. In 2001, possibly most of the people had written us off. But we knew what we were strong in. We focused on the core and we brought it up. We shed the excess weight, the lofty targets we had set for ourselves, focused on the core and grew it back. When we look at potential targets globally, we look at them from this experience that we have had ourselves. Are they going through a rough patch? Possibly, yes. But is there a core which clearly has value, and if we are able to bring that core out, then we will be able to make them fit back on their feet again. And fortunately, we have been able to do that with almost every acquisition we have had, barring possibly the acquisition in China, which incidentally was well on the track to achieve financial independence, profitability, and everything when COVID hit. And then obviously some of the volumes and everything, they went out of whack. But otherwise, the focus is on finding not companies which are in trouble because of lack of strengths, but just finding them at a bargain price, but finding companies which have at least clear core strengths which cannot be mimicked by the larger market and competition, and then bringing those strengths out. That's what we have been focusing on globally. And that has helped us have these entities in many of the parts of the world. Today, we have these subsidiaries in Australia, in Mexico, US, Brazil. Coming to the aspects of what companies, firms from countries like ours can do to build businesses globally, it's important for us to look at two things. One, ensure that the path of assimilation, both cultural and technology is clear. Without that, things would be much more difficult in terms of integration, building trust. In almost every instance where we have acquired, we have seen that the different sides that are now together on the back of an acquisition, they start interacting tentatively. There's trust to be built. There's communication clarity that needs to be brought in. If you are not clear that culturally, that in terms of the team, you would be able to assimilate, no matter how good the business is, it would be very difficult to actually ingest it, actually sort of make it back to business kind of with your support, and ensure that someday, with a couple of years, this business is back on its own feet with the central core at the HO just standing behind, but letting the business flourish on its own. The second aspect is building brands acceptability in many of the global markets is a tough job, and tougher still for at least at this stage of our economic development, for companies coming from countries like India, especially in Western markets. It's easier to lose trust if you make one step wrong, kind of. You need to be very clear that you do things in ways that build trust, and even if it is slow, it's sure-footed. We would, as Symphony, we would want to avoid any steps which would cause negative vibes in terms of what the intent of the company is, how it is handling customers, how it is handling relationships. So we take our time, for example, identifying partners in many countries, but once we identify them, we identify it in a way which can be, wherein partners can be there for next 5, 7, 10 years, rather than having a need to go in with someone, it's good for 1 year, but agle saal dekhenge, kind of. We build it slow, but we understand that the standards, the expectations are higher to just meet the basic threshold of acceptability in many of the markets. If the original company, if the original parent is from a country like India. So that's also something that we are cognizant of and working on, building slowly but surely.